The liturgy of the word today, my dear friends, invites each and every one of us to ask ourselves a foundational question about life. What is it? The question is, do I know why am I on this earth? Do I understand why we are on this earth? What is the very purpose of our being in this world? The parable that is found in the gospel passage today brings to us the image of the vineyard. If you look at the Old Testament writings of the authors of the Bible, very often the image of the vineyard was to describe the people of God. It goes without saying, a vineyard doesn't fall from the skies. It has always an owner. The owner of the vineyard has given it over to the servants, and he wants naturally to produce good wine so that the servants become fruitful and effective, and they become productive, and at the end of time they will find their own reward. But if the servants forget that they are servants and they assume that they are owners, what happens to them is that they will only destroy their own meaning, and they will only dig their own graves of destruction. So the author of the parable, that is Jesus himself, reminds the people of Israel at that time that the moment you have lost sense of your servanthood, that we are here on this earth to serve who? The owner of life, God. And what you do to yourself is that you damage your own identity, you destroy your own meaning, and you become victims of your own unrealistic purposes, which will lead you to your own darkness. But if you're conscious that you are a servant, that you are here to serve the owner, and that your period of time is limited, and that you are committing yourself completely to bear fruit according to the design and the plan and the will of the owner, then you will be a happy person. You will find true happiness for yourself, and your journey or your existence on this earth will be meaningful for you. My dear friends, when you look at life in general, what happens to most of us is that we enter life from the point of our birth, and that we are given a period of time, and the point of departure is the moment of our death. We are here only for a period of time. We are not here forever. So therefore, in the first place, we have to remember that we are here only for a period of time, and therefore for what? To work in the vineyard which belongs to God, so that by being conscious of the very meaning of our being here, that we will find fulfillment, and that our commitment to doing the will of the owner of life will make us become good servants who serve our time, and that we depart with contentment in our hearts and in our minds. One of the great lecturers of common psychology in the world today is Professor Jordan Peterson of the University of Toronto in Canada. Now, drawing from his own clinical experiences, he says, having met with hundreds and thousands of men and women who have found their lives meaningless, he says, the very purpose of our human life is to be virtuous. Now, what do you mean by being virtuous? Being virtuous means that you don't get yourself possessed by the material possessions. In human life, we always realize when people get too carried away with their material life, the more materialism you get caught into, less happiness, less meaningfulness, less depth for yourself comes to your own journey on this earth. And therefore he says, those who have not found virtues in life suffer, because life is to be lived for the greater purpose of serving the mind of the owner, that is God. The moment you lose that transcendence, the moment you lose that idea of the divine, from the moment that you take God out of the picture, then we only become easy targets of our own destruction and annihilation. Now, the greatest example for this can be found, my dear friends, in the history of the Christian world in Europe. In the early 19th century, great philosophers like Friedrich Nietzsche, they argued openly that there is no God. And in fact, he wrote, God is dead. Now, when you take God out of our human journey, human life, then the very actions, our culture, our ethos, our values, everything become godless. So you cut the owner out of the ownership. You leave the owner away from the ownership of the vineyard, and you try to make it your own. Then the end purpose, the end result is that you only destroy yourself. Now, commenting on what happened in the early 19th century in Europe, Jordan Peterson says, from the moment you do remove God from the picture, from your cultural ethos, you remove God from the very foundations of morality, then anything is possible and anything can happen. So therefore, Jordan Peterson says, the annihilation of men and women during the First and the Second World War, and what happened thereafter by totalitarian regimes in the world, were only out there to destroy the humankind that have lost the sense of God. So therefore, my dear friends, there are enough and more examples in not only in the collective world, but also in the individual human lives. If you have lost the very meaning of your journey on this earth as a limited time, in a limited space, and that you are here for a time and for a certain meaning and purpose, and if you only get caught up in the material world, then you end up being miserable yourself. It is the story of any human person who has lost the very meaning, and that meaning is to be found from within in your relationship to the owner of life, that is God. Now, as human beings, we can go to the extreme of losing that sense and even to destroy the God concept, the entire idea of transcendence from our day-to-day life. And it only can lead us to men and women who have lost respect for each other, lost respect for life, that life becomes your own possession, that you do not have any consciousness of the divine purpose of life itself, then, my dear friends, we only dig our own graves. This can be proved in our own day-to-day life experiences as well, where people as individuals have become the owners of their life. Being an owner of life is not for human beings, because the moment you own human life, you become a destructive element for life itself. Amen.